Café and Networking Podcast promotes successful business owners, business experts throughout the world. I'm Tom Reaoch, known as the King of Networking, connecting people from my unique communication lab in Brazil. Today we talk with Barrett Matthews, joining us from Greenbelt, Maryland. Barrett Matthews, the media boss, is an authority on media, execution, productivity, and podcasting. Barrett has shared his unique brand and productivity genius with organizations worldwide. He's an author and the podcast host of The Productive Podcaster. So Barrett, is podcasting where people should start?
Well, Tom, thank you for having me. Yeah, I actually believe that. I have worked in media for a number of years, dating back to the 1980s. And what I started to do is work with people to help them to get their business brands out there to more people who can find them. Mm-hmm. And I found that the easiest way to get started is through podcasting. And it's rather simple when you think about it. If you're going to do, say, a streaming TV show, if you're going to do film, if you're going to do books, if you're going to do social media, all of those are great forms of media and they should be utilized.
Right.
But with podcasting, you get to talk about something you love. And it's easy for all of us, as long as you can talk, it's easy for us to talk about something you love. You just have to hit record.
And it comes from the heart, right?
It comes from the heart. And you can take that content and then repurpose it to other things in media.
So that you're generating something that can be cut up and snipped and put back together and used many ways.
Exactly. And you don't really have to think about it. You just talk.
Well, actually, we do think about it because it's what we do.
Right. You know what I mean? I'm just saying you don't have to sit there because a lot of people say if they're on camera, they stress about, oh God, I'm on camera. I hope I look good. When you're talking about something you love, you just talk about something you love.
No, that's true. And when I learned that when I wrote a book, I learned to write a book when I followed the newsletter. He says, well, if you can talk, you can write. And it's back to your point. If you can talk, you could podcast.
Yeah, exactly. And I agree because it's just one of those things that if you love sports, you can talk about sports and you have fun talking about sports. It's just that you just have to record it and you can turn that into a podcast.
And people want to interact with you. And from a business sense, they want to hear the real you.
Exactly. That's a great point too, because a lot of times when we quote unquote think about it too much, it's not the real you coming out. When you just talk about it as you love it and as you feel it, it comes out as you, and people can feel that.
Well, and I see that in the corporate world, in the business sense, you're not really sure who the you is. Who's the person behind all of that, right? And people want to talk to a you.
They do. They really do. I tell some of my podcasting clients because they want to edit this and edit that, and they want it to be perfect. I said, people don't want perfect. People are imperfect themselves.
Right.
They want to know that you're imperfect so they can relate to you. Because if they can't relate to you, they're not going to keep listening to you.
No, I agree. And that's one of the points I try to make is we need to be authentic. They want the authentic you. They want the real you.
Exactly. And that's something that only you can bring. It's the real you. Because the thing is that they don't know, especially, if you have a new podcast, your friends, your family, they know the real you, but the audience doesn't know the real you. So it has to come across via that voice of yours. It has to come across via the way you speak to them. It has to come across via the way you laugh at yourself when you make a mistake. It's okay to do that because people then realize, that person's real. And if that person is real, then they can relate to you. And I tell you, no one wants to deal with a person that they can feel as being phony.
We got a lot of that, right?
Unfortunately.
No, and we do. Life, it's full of that. But to that point, and I think the hurdle for a person, say writing a book, that's a hurdle. But to make a podcast, that's also a hurdle. So I'm sure your clients you have to sit down and talk quite a bit to get them to do it.
Some of them I do. And like I said, the main thing is I tell them, I said, just record yourself. First of all, I tell them to write down an outline. Mm-hmm. Don't write down a script, write down an outline.
Right.
Because if you script it, it sounds scripted. And then there's that phony part about it.
It's not authentic, right.
Right. I said, just write down an outline of thoughts you want to talk about. And then just talk about those thoughts. And I said, once you start doing it, I usually say after the first one or two, then it becomes like, okay, I can do this. This is not that hard. Because you realize I'm just talking. And just like your podcast here, you can even bring on guests. If you have a guest, that makes it easier.
Now, well, for me, and one of my objectives is what I consider my podcast my MBA, because obviously I've interviewed here in Café and Networking over 160 different people.
Nice.
And what I say, I learn from everybody. I'm learning from you right now. So Barrett is here. No, I know we learn from everybody. So my guest gives me an opportunity to learn. And back to the MBA, many times we go, well, I want to get an MBA. The MBA, 3 days after you're done with it, it's obsolete. And many times people go and want an MBA for the networking portion. I met 168 different people all over the world. I met you. And, you know, how would I ever have met you normally?
Right.
Low percentage, right?
Very good. Yeah, that's it. That's a really, really poignant point. I like that.
No, so when I say I'm going out and I'm promoting business owners, successful business owners and experts, that's what I do. Obviously, I have a mechanism of finding them. I found you, you are, and we're going to talk about it. Whatever you just said, I learned. I learned from you. I like better my own podcast.
I like that.
All right, interview style. That's obviously individual, but I can learn. I've learned from everybody that I've talked to. So that, I think, is the best. And I've learned about business. So we're going back to a business environment. I learn about business all over the world, how people act, react, what they're doing.
Yeah.
So I think that's something, that's the icing on the cake that you get.
I agree with you. I agree. And it's important to learn from everybody. It's vitally important, because the moment you think you know everything, boy, you're doomed.
You're done. You become a case study.
Yeah, right. And I mean, I sit back and I look at some of the younger generation, and I see some of the old get out of my yard people, and I'm like, you can learn from all of these. These kids know a lot. These younger people know a lot, and there's something that we can learn. Because, I mean, first of all, they can learn just from the internet, but we didn't have that luxury growing up.
Right.
And so they get to learn things faster than we did.
Right.
And they don't do certain things the way we did, but no generation does things the way the other generation did. And we have to
actually do it better. We just don't want to admit it.
We don't want to admit it. We don't want to admit it. And that's the thing. So there's something we can always, and that's something they can learn from us, of course, but there are things that we can learn from them as well. And we have to embrace that and recognize it, and actually, instead of condemning them, praise them for what they know. Because
but to the point of podcasting, again, I agree with you. It gives us as podcasters and podcast hosts sort of an air of being modern, up to date.
I agree.
Because a couple years ago, podcasting was an unknown. It was known for music, right? But as we call content podcast, what we're doing, this was sort of up to date stuff.
It is.
So, and from the younger generation, they know that. And that's where they go. That's where they are. And it's not today. So we can be old, but we can never be obsolete. We need to be refreshed.
Exactly. And that's a great point. It's funny, we have to embrace the fact that technology can take us places that we normally wouldn't be. And with podcasting, it's funny, I laugh. My mother will be 88 this year, and she's walking around with her iPhone and and she's talking about Googling stuff, talking to Alexa and everything. So it's like,
that's it.
And you gotta, and I sit there and say, if my 88-year-old mother can do this, I definitely need to make sure I'm up with technology. I gotta stay ahead of her. So,
well, what I say, unfortunately, my mother has passed away, but while she was alive, I'm sure she's like your mother. I would say the best marketing director I ever had was my mother. She would walk down the street. She'd tell everybody about her son, whether they wanted to hear or not.
That was especially when I got my first job in television. Oh my goodness! And the weirdest things to happen. People would say, "I saw your name on the credits." I'm like, "What am I supposed to say to that?" Thank you for seeing my name. I didn't get that, but yeah, you're right. Mom
was telling everybody, right?
Yes, she was. Yes, she was.
And that's the good part. That's the fun part.
Mm-hmm.
Well, anyway, Barrett, I want to thank you for sharing your time and say hello to your mother. All right?
Yes, I will. Thank you, sir.
Tell her about my podcast if you don't mind. All right.
Definitely.
So where can our audience find you?
Well, they can go to 5waystoPayingClients.com and they can learn a little bit about me. And it's also a complimentary training I give to people just for paying attention to what I'm talking about, just listening to this crazy old mind of mine.
Very good. So it's Barrett Matthews, Barrett, and the last name Mattthews. So that's 5waystoPayingClients.com, right?
Correct. That's the number 5.
So thanks again for being with us, Barrett.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate your time, my friend.
Okay. Café and Networking is brought to us by Focus MI Market Intelligence, an agricultural market research specialist in Brazil. More information at focusmi.com. Thanks for listening until the next time here at Café and Networking Podcast.